they are still lying to you. Only now they've changed the lie. And this time, if you're not prepared, you will become a slave to a failing global economic and political system. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how they lied to you about inflation, how it will affect your financial future, your living standards, the savings in your bank account, your retirement, and your overall future in life. I'm going to share with you some of the most important and powerful ways I've been preparing for this moment in history over the last few years. And last, I just want to say a thank you to our sponsor in today's video, which is Great Thunder Gold. They are a lithium and gold mining company, which I'll tell you more about later in this video. So first they said that inflation wasn't real, that all of this money printing they've been doing for the last 10 years would have no effects. And then they began to tell us that we don't even need to worry about it at all. It's not on the radar. For example,
inflation concerns for now are to the downside. The risks are to the downside, not to the upside. We see prices moving down. That's because in a lot of parts of the economy, people are cutting prices.
The next big lie, once everybody started to see inflation happening in all of their grocery bills, in all of their gas, it was point blank, dead obvious. Then they used the mockingbird puppets in the financial media to continue to say it was temporary and it was transitory. It was just going to be here for a little while. There's nothing to worry about, guys. This is temporary. We're not actually destroying the currency and doing a wealth transfer where we're going to own everything and you're going to own nothing. This is temporary. For example,
our best view is that the effect on inflation will be neither particularly large nor persistent.
Now, big lie number 3 is they realize, oh my gosh, it is here. We are destroying the currency. Quick, tell all the mouthpieces at the media that inflation is actually good. So you've got CNBC saying, guys, there's actually a silver lining. It's going to mean you're going to make more money, guys. And this is what many people call the totalitarian tiptoe. And this is where centralized authority keeps moving back the goalpost. And they say first, it's not there. Then they say it's only for a little while. Then they say, hey, it's here, but it's actually good. And so here's one final clip wrapping up their news cycle on inflation.
Federal Reserve is keeping interest rates unchanged and will maintain asset purchases at $120 billion a month. Now, in its policy statement, the central bank said that economic activity and employment have strengthened. It acknowledged that inflation is rising, but still said that the increase largely reflects transitory factors. Now, that is the same language that the Fed used last time. But the Fed did increase its forecast for inflation this year to 3.4% from 2.4%.
So why is this such a big deal for you? Why do their lies affect you, your future, your retirement, your money, your family? Because as inflation rises, the money that you have today that you work for now is less valuable tomorrow. So at a 15% rate of inflation, $2 cup of coffee, it's about $2.30 the next year, despite the Biden administration saying that you can save 16 cents on ketchup because what they're doing is so successful. The truth is, this is bad news when you consider how high inflation is in commodities, natural resources, groceries, and the things that affect you. So the real reason that inflation is bad is that it is the reset. It is a transfer of wealth to the top 1% of every single industry, while the middle class and the poor that own no assets get absolutely destroyed. So said another way, you had $10,000 in a bank account, 15% inflation. In just 1 year, you have $8,500 in purchasing power. But in the absolute worst cases, you can actually lose all your wealth and your savings in just 5 to 7 years. For example, I recently had a man on my show whose family survived hyperinflation in Europe. So he said that the whole thing went from 0 to 60 in just 5 to 7 years. So at the start, his family had enough money in their bank account to buy 3 average priced single family homes. But by the end of those 5 to 7 years, the same amount of money was only worth enough to buy a black and white box set television. So the reason that this is so sinister is because they're lying. It can truly wreck everybody, but they're saying that it's not happening while your wealth and your savings are stolen. Meanwhile, all the assets that the elites own continue to make them more and more and more powerful. So part of this great reset is really about a shift of wealth to the truly elite class that governs the global economic, banking, investment, and political structures of the world. And this will be done through inflation. They are resetting the wealth of the world into a more concentrated group of hands and taking it away from the 99%. The great reset of inflation will be no different. And that's why these lies are so sinister. So then the question is, all right, what do we do about it instead of sit around and yell about it or get mad or you get negative or we want to ignore it because it's just bad vibes? So let's break down some of the things that I've done to prepare myself. These are just my personal opinions. They seem to have worked very, very, very well for me though. So number 1, building new streams of income. Because you're going to actually need to have greater year-over-year growth in your annual income than the real rate of inflation. You can't trust the CPI number. It's a lie. You'll get wiped out. Otherwise, you're going to be getting more poor every year if you aren't making more money than the rise of the rate of inflation, which I think is probably like 15%. So if you don't want to be a slave to a system that's starting to destroy everybody, then essentially you have to start a business that cash flows, ultimately ones that have leverage, things that have low overhead, and ideally things that the government cannot cancel and declare as non-essential. So if you'd like to see more on this topic in future videos, you can comment down below and let me know. But I think one of the ways to look at it is just simplify it and say, what can I do that can earn me an extra $500 in the next 30 days? Or what can I do that can earn me an extra $1,000 a month or $5,000 a month? And break it down like that, and you start to build multiple sources of income, ideally things that can leverage the internet as well. Once you build cash flow and you start to build surplus and you become a capitalist, i.e. you have freedom from this implosion that's happening in the system, my next step was, once I had surplus, to start to store that surplus. I store that surplus in, this is a American Eagle gold coin. I store them in gold, I store them in silver, and I also own Bitcoin. I also have a cash position as well, because if there is another massive crash that happens, I want to be prepared for that too, even though my cash does have a depreciation every single year due to them destroying it. Now, people ask about gold. Why own gold and silver? It's performing so poorly over the last while. And the truth is that gold coin ultimately will always have powerful value in a time of inflation. And in fact, there are actual reasons that I philosophically want to own gold and silver. And the first one is that they actually don't want the price to rise. You can make your own inference about who I mean by they, but here is a copy of a WikiLeaks cable that was sent by the United States government detailing the manipulation of gold price because they don't want people to actually own it. So they said, quote, "The major impact of private U.S. ownership, according to the dealer's expectations, will be the formation of a sizable gold futures market. Each of the dealers expressed the belief that the futures market would be a significant proportion and physical trading would be minuscule by comparison." So what they're saying is they were using the futures market to take gold out of people's hands and make them trade the paper market. They go on, also expressed was the expectation that large volume futures dealing would create a highly volatile market. In turn, the volatile price movements would diminish the initial demand for physical holding and most likely negate long-term holding by US citizens. This was designed to keep you away from gold. Now, next on the list of another way to hold your wealth, many very smart people will teach you about real estate. That is not going to be me. I've focused exclusively on building cash flow online businesses and actually then storing my wealth in gold, silver, cryptocurrency, and specifically mining stocks in the gold, silver, and commodities space as well, which I'll touch on now. Now, on the subject of mining stocks and investing into commodities, my strategy is to spread my bets across many stock picks, from everything from gold, silver to uranium, all types of commodities. And this is what I view as my wealth generator. This is something that I put the money in that not only can I afford to lose it, but this is the money that I put in where I can afford to wait on it. Because I expect this commodity cycle to really play itself out over the next decade, basically, maybe 5 to 10 years from now, as we continue to have this devaluation of currency and more money printing to build up infrastructure to pump more money through the economy and thus give people more jobs. So this is a long-term bet that I could be wrong about, that I feel pretty damn certain about, and I'm not the only one. Here's a clip of billionaire Paul Tudor Jones talking about investing in commodities, gold, the inflows and the outflows of money, and why it makes it so easy for this market to basically be cornered because it's been so underinvested.
Well, I'm going to watch the Fed on Wednesday. If they treat these numbers, which were material events, they're very material. If they treat them with nonchalance, then I think it's just a green light to bet heavily on every inflation trade. The idea that inflation is transitory, to me, is that one just doesn't work the way I see the world. So I look at $88 trillion of assets under management by asset managers. Of that, $670 billion are invested in commodity indices like Bloomberg Commodity Index, Goldman Sachs Commodity Index. That's about 0.75%. If I rewind just to 2011, when inflation was peaking at 3%, not CPI at 4.9, those same investors had 1.2% of their assets, which would imply today, if they just got back to weight, another $400 billion of buying in commodity indices.
So to me, this is a very exciting sector to be in. And in honor of discussing mining stocks now, I'll tell you a bit about our sponsor for today's video, which is Great Thunder Gold. So Mr. Eric Sprott owns about 15% of the company. If you don't know who Eric Sprott is, self-made billionaire, probably the most successful gold, silver, and natural resource investor in the world today. And he owns about 15% of Great Thunder Gold, and they really are sharing the same district area as another one of Sprott's picks that did quite well last year, which is Wallbridge Mining, only that Great Thunder Gold is primarily focused on gold and lithium, which I'll tell you more about in just a moment. And number two big idea is they're actively drilling right now in Canada. So news from the ground is coming, and obviously the timing is quite great. So during the last gold run in 2020, Wallbridge, which was the other Sprott company, had an incredible performance while they were drilling during the last movement in gold that happened in 2020. So number three, the CEO, Blair Noddy, he owns about 17% of the company. So between Sprott and between Blair Noddy, they own about 32% or so of the entire company, which is pretty rare, and it's pretty cool to see as well. Now, number four, the company's current price is 50% below all-time highs. Now, this is due in part to the large sell-off in gold and silver related mining stocks since the highs that were posted in about August 2020. So last but not least, they are predominantly gold and, as I said earlier, lithium. So their lithium project is a past producer. So they do have a chance at modernizing it right in the middle of the electric vehicle boom that's starting to happen. You know, the market obviously in lithium is about to explode and the demand's going to explode. So Great Thunder has a chance to move into a pretty timely and hot market because lithium is going to be very important in the electrification of the world. And as governments are now beginning to do mandates on electric vehicles and reducing carbon emissions, we've drastically underfunded into all of these types of assets. You heard Paul Tudor Jones talk about it, so I won't beat a dead horse with it. But we have not very many lithium mines or lithium opportunities coming online. And so, in my opinion, it's a really smart play by Great Thunder to not just be a gold company, but really focus on something that's going to get a huge bid from all this infrastructure spending by governments with the electrification and the electrical vehicles of the world. So Great Thunder Gold trades in the United States under the ticker symbol GTGFF, and then they trade in Canada as GTG. So we want to thank them for being today's sponsor. So long video, let's do a recap here. First point, they're lying to you. They are lying about what is really happening with the resetting of a wealth transfer in our world. They are using inflation and not telling you how bad it actually is. So you need to have multiple sources of income to increase your income greater than the rate of inflation. The true rate of inflation is something you'll need to decide for yourself, but they're lying about their CPI number. I personally think, and I could be wrong, it's closer to 15%. So you need to grow your income at that rate every year. So that means additional sources of income, build businesses that leverage the internet that they cannot deem non-essential, and especially build income sources that are scalable where you can divorce yourself for trading your time directly for money. As you build more and more savings and more capital and more surplus, you can store that in gold and silver bullion, cryptocurrencies. You could have some cash available for some buying opportunities as we face more market volatility in the future. Just know that that cash is losing its value. And then last but not least, mining stocks and commodities present an excellent opportunity that Paul Tudor Jones touched on, that he thinks has the opportunity to truly be squeezed. So if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit the subscribe and bell notification. Hey, the bell notification is what notifies you for new videos. So all the big financial elite companies are paying YouTube to show up in the top of the newsfeed. So if you think we do a good job over here, make sure you hit that bell notification to get notified for future episodes. Give us a comment right there down below and let us know one way you are preparing right now for this inflationary environment. If you think anything that I missed that's important for others to know. So thanks for being here, and thank you to our sponsor, Great Thunder Gold. We'll see you next time.